All right, hello everybody. Welcome to the weekly SIG Docs meeting. It's Tuesday, 12:30 Central Time. My name is Jim Angel. I will be your host today. So kicking things off, let me take a look here at the agenda. First things first, do we have any new contributors joining us today on the call that'd like to introduce themselves? Hearing nothing, welcome back everybody. Good seeing everyone. Some reminders for this week. This week's PR Wrangler is Jared Body, and next week's Wrangler is Caitlin Bernard. There will be no PR Wranglers for the week of December 22nd through the 29th, and the 29th. And then also make sure you know your PR wrangling shifts as we go into the new year. And
Jim,
one thing
can I
didn't...
speak to that now, in sort of skipping ahead to an item a little further down the agenda, which is I'm on the hook for wrangling the PR Wrangler schedule for the first half of 2020. And I have not yet wrangled the folks I asked to help me. And next week is we moved the APAC friendly time. That's a meeting I can't make, and a lot of folks on this call don't make that meeting either. So I think that what we should do, I'm suggesting, because I think we've got time in this meeting, I will go in and take a first pass on my own and ping Jim and Brad and Caitlin, who all agreed to help wrangle this, and then we can do it asynchronously, because I think that's going to be the most efficient way to get it up before the end of the year so that people know what's coming up, and so that there's time to say, hey, wait a minute, I can't make this week, can I switch around, or somebody's missing from the list, even though Zach did go in and clean up the owner's file, just so we have a little bit more time. I should be able to get to that before next Tuesday's meeting, so those of you who are in the meeting can announce it, and then I will also put it in the SIG Docs channel. With my apologies for not having it ready for this week, but I think we can close the communication loop. And we can continue to adjust. This is a reminder to everybody on the call who is an approver that it's not set in stone, and as Zach keeps reminding us, the most important thing is to make sure you know what's coming up, so that if there's a problem, you can flag it and we can take care of it.
Yep, sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, sounds good. Good plan.
All I'm going to do is take the list of names in the owner's file and dump them into a table on the wiki page. I'm not changing format. I'm not doing anything different. So this first pass is really just brain dead, and then people can call out if there's issues.
Every journey starts with a brain dead first step.
I was going to say it's a brain dead first step that I'm not doing, so I'm happy about it. No matter how you
None of us are going. One less step for the rest of them. I was just going to put, Jim in for each slot, so you're one ahead of me. Feel
nice,
good.
Yeah, throw it on, No, great.
Yeah,
thank you very
other
much.
People are feeling mildly hysterical as the year winds down. I guess,
Yeah, no, I'm definitely feeling that as we go into the tail end of the year, and I think mild is being a little bit more more than friendly to what the hysteria is.
Yeah.
Cool. So moving along here with our agenda, giving a quick update on the release. Big congratulations to Damini and the release team for SIG Docs. The 117 is out the door successfully yesterday, so big congrats to them. We had a few snags with the 117 branch, I should be more clear, the 116 release branch, which was the master branch yesterday that gets kind of, I guess, sunsetted. And I guess this might be a good opportunity to quickly just talk about the branching strategy. So we traditionally work out of the master branch as all of our documentation goes into master. And as part of the release process, we then still work out of master. So think of it this way: on Monday, the release day, when 116 becomes 117, in theory, we don't change anything from a Kubernetes website perspective. It's still getting operated on out of the master branch. So what we do is at the time that we release a version of Kubernetes is we take like a snapshot, if you will, of the current state of master and put it in a release dash whatever that current version is. So what we've had recently today with this, or yes, yesterday with the 117 release was when we went to cut that snapshot of master and put it in a release dash 116 kind of bucket, if you will, there was commits from different localizations that have overlapped and conflicted that Domini had to resolve. So we're in a good spot right now where we have the 117 docs live. However, the release 116, which is the old state of master, has some merge conflicts that the Domini is currently working on resolving. So I think we have some future meetings there, some future discussions on branching strategy and how we handle this moving forward. We haven't seen this in particular, or this issue in particularly on this portion of the release, but every time we do have a release, there's always some sort of fun. So just keeping everyone updated on that, and a big thanks to the folks who helped out with the release yesterday.
I got a question. So at what point does the docs go from V1.16 to 17?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and that's really what I was talking about, where master doesn't have any sort of change, if you will. So we're still operating on a master. Really what happens is we take a snapshot of the git commit before we release the blog. And when I say release the blog, usually every single Kubernetes release has like a CNCF official blog post that goes out. So it's really at whatever point does the blog get merged. As soon as the blog gets merged, in theory, quote unquote, I'm doing air quotes here, in theory now master would be 117. So a kind of a fun fact there is when you go to the Kubernetes website and you use those top drop-down menus to switch different versions, each version goes to a different branch on the Kubernetes website. The main one being latest goes out of master. To go into 116, that's the release dash 116 branch I was just referring to that has some merge conflicts currently. And then same down the row, 113, 114, 115.
Because it says version 1.17 on kubernetes.io/doc/home. So I'm on V117, but in the bottom right when it's just about the documentation, if you click on that, it still says V1.16.
Gotcha. Would you mind throwing a link to that in the chat? Or is it just off the Kubernetes website?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can pull that up. And this might be something we end up taking offline with the Dominion team.
Hey, this is another one of those things that sounds vaguely familiar. Like this is not the first time this issue has happened. There is, I think, a variable that is supposed to pull in the version number to that snippet, and it doesn't always happen. Either that, or it was broken and somebody accidentally hard-coded it and overwrote the variable. Anyway, there's various possibilities for why that happened. It's not, I'm pretty sure this is not a brand new thing to this release alone.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. And David, if you wouldn't mind, just for the sake of today's call, would you mind opening up an issue and copying myself in there and Domini as well?
Yeah, sure. I think I was on the bottom left, downloaded Kubernetes current release notes, goes to V16 instead of V. Yeah, I'll open up a ticket, sure.
Gotcha. Yeah, that'd be awesome. Thank you.
Thanks. You bet.
Yeah, and just to add to that real quick, so the release, the big piece is getting the 117 dropdown working, getting the blog post release, and actually getting the release moving forward and out the door. But inevitably, there's always some sort of one off or two offs or sometimes three offs that we have to go back and patch in and change. And then usually when things like this happen, we go and update the release team handbook so we can try to avoid that in the future. But Kubernetes likes to surprise us in unique and unusual ways every release. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Cool, so moving on, do we want to talk chair business? I know Zach was originally leading this discussion. I believe this is Jennifer and Caitlin.
I think Zach wanted us to deal with it without his leadership and wrangling. That was my impression anyway. Caitlin, I can start and then sort of follow up. As at least some folks on the call know, I am stepping down as lead. My leadership has been thin for the last number of months. I hope I've been something of a moral support to the other leads, but that's really been the bulk of my contribution. And it's pretty clearly time for other people who have been, in fact, taking on leadership roles in the community, in the Docs community for quite some time, to step up. And I'm not going away. I will continue to attend meetings as I can. I will keep myself in the approver rotation and contribute as I can, but in a more of a sort of a mentoring and emerita status, possibly analogous to Jared's. And to keep the 3-person lead role going, Caitlin Barnard has agreed to step up. So take it away, Caitlin. Introduce yourself to people who might not be familiar with. I mean, Caitlin is amazing. She's been wrangling the blog for forever and expanding that role into more and more Docs leadership de facto anyway. So now it becomes a formal reality.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jennifer. I know I speak for pretty much everyone when I say thank you for all of your leadership and all your contributions to the team. But I'm super excited to be stepping up into this role. I've been, I think involved in SIG Docs now for the past 2 to 3 years or so, primarily in the blog and formalizing all of that process. So I'm really looking forward to working with you all now in a chair position.
Awesome.
Woohoo!
Yeah. Congratulations.
I will turn my
Caitlin,
audio on so you can hear me clap.
And thank you, Jennifer, for all your leadership as well. Great opportunities for both of you. So,
yes, thank you very much, Jennifer. And it's not bad here on the emeritus side of things.
I follow your lead as always, Jared.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Caitlin. Both of you have been around since I've joined and been part of SIG Docs and have been helpful for me, at least, and through my journey in SIG Docs. And I can't say I would be as successful today without some guidance and leadership from everybody here on this call and peers of ours as part of this call. So I know you're not going anywhere, Jennifer, but we will miss you. And looking forward to working more with you, Caitlin. So moving on to the next agenda item is better approver guidelines. And this came up, I believe, was it Caitlin and Jennifer assigned to this?
I'm Brad as well, I think, right?
Brad? If you want more work.
Right, no, we've been iterating, Caitlin and I've been iterating on the document for sure, right?
Yeah, I'm joking. I know that you and Caitlin have been involved here. So do you want to take it away and then kind of tee us up and give some context on what the contributor guide update is going to bring and what's driving this change?
Do you want to go, Caitlin, or do you want me to go?
Yeah, sure. I'll give some context here. So last week it became clear that we haven't really given enough guidelines, I think, to a lot of people with approver status on some of the outlier cases, I'll say, of what needs to be routed to different teams, what different teams need to review and stuff like that. For example, we have formalized the blog review process into a separate team earlier this year and are trying to better communicate out some of those changes. So we have a V1 update here to the contributors guide. And we'll hopefully expand this into a bigger project as well, just to make it really clear to approvers, what with an LGTN label should be approved, what needs to go to the blog team, what should be a chair level review, stuff like that. So definitely feel free to take a look at this doc. I would also love any feedback for how this information can be presented more helpful to people. And this doc is just V1 so far. So Brad, anything to add?
No, I think one of the reasons we ran into this is there would be certain areas that were not my area of expertise, say, you know, that are more on the platform infrastructure side, maybe tweaking a cascading style sheet. So me personally, I would never hit one of those issues and try and approve them. I was always very careful to route them to a chair or somebody who seemed to have that experience. But if you make someone an approver and it turns out they have that background, they look at that and say, oh, that's just like making an approval, just like making a documentation approval. And so realizing that different people with different backgrounds come in and they might feel confident to approve something, but the reality is we had some tribal knowledge that said, listen, certain things go to chairs, certain things go to blogs, and let's try and make that more clear so we all don't get frustrated at each other, I think is a good way to look at it. So I know we've both been trying to add all the use cases we found of you need for this, you need to worry about this, or don't approve this, or, you know, this needs to be routed to a chair. I think we've got them all in. I think the one I was a little worried about was really understanding what connotes an architectural change. Are there certain files? You know, is it, you know, it was really easy for me because there are certain pieces of the platform infrastructure I was like, I'm not touching that. That's Jared, or that's Zach, or that's Jim, or Jennifer, right? But we needed something better than that sort of very ad hoc way of routing. So I think that's what we're trying to accomplish.
Awesome. Sounds great. Any questions or comments regarding the approver guidelines?
I will take a look and try to help address what's the best way to sort of include and present this information on the page, if that question is still outstanding. I do think this is absolutely awesome. And just, I mean, all the like continuing refinement that we do of kinds of changes and, you know, who should do what kinds of things. What you said, Brad, about CSS was just like really rang home. At the same time, we sometimes wind up with the need to go spelunking in the config files, for example. I know I've done that in, you know, sort of releases past. So I think maybe this should remain in the realm of tribal knowledge. I'm kind of thinking out loud at y'all at the moment. Maybe we want to explicitly say, okay, certain kinds of changes need to be run by the chairs, but do it in such a way that we don't discourage people from figuring things out. Like some of those config files, if you spend enough time with them, it's pretty obvious what they're doing and where things are breaking. But on the other hand, you also don't have to be approving a thing to contribute that information. So maybe I might go away and think about some words for the doc. Sorry, that was a really kind of an unsorted brain dump at y'all, but
I appreciate it. Then
warning, ideas incoming.
No, it's all good stuff. And David, you're gonna say something?
Yeah, so it says serve as a new contributor ambassador. And then below that section, it says current new contributor ambassadors are announced at each SIG Docs meeting in the SIG Docs channel. I've always had the SIG Docs channel open every day. I've not seen that announcement. Is that something that was a good idea at one point? Is that still something that happens?
I personally don't have any context on that. I'm not sure if anyone else does.
Yeah, I mean, we had sort of a new leadership role of the SIG Doc Ambassador. So if there was a new person shows up in the channel and they need a friend or a helping hand or someone they can feel comfortable asking questions to, that was the SIG Doc Ambassador. And I know I volunteered to do it. So if anything pops up, you know, and someone says, hey, Brad, can you go just check on this person or help this person? So I know it's, at least for the one time they mentioned me, or I think we announced it once, but I guess it doesn't happen that often. I guess we could always use more ambassadors, but if you volunteer to be one, we'll be happy to make sure your name gets announced in the Slack channel. It's just a nice role, if that's what it was referring to.
I was just curious if there's... Go ahead, Jennifer. Sorry.
Sorry, David. No, listening to you, I was thinking, I wonder, and I was part of the group that originally brainstormed this role. Maybe Jared has some recollections here too. But I don't recall this particular piece of it. It seems to me as though it could be a really good idea, though, to commit ourselves to regularly announcing who the current new contributor ambassador is, both in the SIG Docs meeting notes and in the channel, because of course, contributors aren't going to know. So
Good point.
I take the spirit of that to mean not announcing when we have a new contributor ambassador, but making a commitment to regularly, like twice a month.
Yeah, I like that a lot. That's a good point.
Maybe we
Great
need
idea,
at the top of the agenda, reminder, new contributors, here's your new contributor ambassador. We could put that as part of that piece of the agenda. So that can, that can be just a regular weekly thing, and then like every other week, we dump it into the channel. That's kind of what you were expecting, David? That's what I heard as you were.
Absolutely, yeah. Yep, just kind of who has that role for the month. And, I'm new to the PR thing myself, so I'd like to document learnings from that. So I might reach out. We might post that first on the SIG Docs channel, check that box off, and then I might reach out to Brad or whoever, whatever brave soul. I know Amy has offered as well to maybe document my interactions with Brad and create a blog post or what have you. And I've also invited David Garcia. He's a friend of mine who also we might both have interest in reaching out to you and documenting our experience for the benefit of others.
Awesome. Yeah, I think this is all great feedback. I did take a note that we should look into more formally announcing that new contributor ambassador role, and I'd like to take that to an action item. I don't know, is there anyone willing to own that or to see that actually throughout? I don't have the cycle at the moment for seeing this through, but anyone on the call will have the bandwidth to take on the new contributor ambassador role and making sure that sees through?
So, well, I mean, what exactly you're asking for? I guess I thought the last time I saw this, we had several of us who were like, yeah, we're happy to be a new contributor ambassador, and you had like a list of 3 or 4 of us willing to do it. Are you looking for somebody to start advertising it, or? Yeah,
talking more about the next step. So it seems like we all agree this is generally a valid idea, and it seems like it'd be beneficial to folks new to SIG Docs. Seeing that we actually are promoting it, seeing that we are actually every 2 weeks announcing it, keeping it in the meeting agenda, keeping it fresh. Someone to actually take the ownership of the day twos, the operations of maintaining that.
I don't mind starting it in January.
Cool.
I don't want to take any more on for December, no offense. But if we can wait till January, I'm happy to help with that.
I think that's all of us at this point, Brad.
Yeah, and I think it makes sense to announce it in January, and just so we're on top of it, because I think we only have one more meeting for the end of the year. So if we're like, here are the new contributor ambassadors, and then like,
crickets,
peace, bye. Like that's so good. So I think we should just like put it in the meeting agenda to announce it in January. And I think maybe just putting a list of names out there, like here are new contributor ambassadors that you can reach out to who are able to help out if you are a new contributor and you don't know where to start. And then we can sort of shepherd them through. So maybe have like a point person or 2, and then they can sort of delegate as needed.
January seems great.
Thank you, Brad.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Brad. All right.
I think everybody's thanking me for saying January. That's
you're saying it, but we're all thinking it, so. Yeah, no, thank you. So moving on to the Doxy status, this is Zach C's update, so I don't have anything other than seeing it's a work in progress. So that's a quick update, unless anyone has anything further to mention on the Doxy.
I'm working with Zach on that as well. So since I worked on Doxy here at Google, I feel like I should be somewhat responsible for helping Kubernetes land that. So I have synced the contractor that Zach has lined up with some other fellow tech writers here at Google who have also worked on Doxy. And so if there are any questions or snags that we hit during the migration, there'll be some technical expertise available to draw upon. But I haven't heard anything around a timeline or a plan or anything past that. It's more like just getting all the resources in place and doing an assessment of what needs to be done. Since you're already
I spun up.
Oh, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I spun up Doxy on my home lab and pushed it out to S3. It was really fun to play with, actually. I'm curious if Zach has any ideas for customizations, because it does look pretty straightforward and plain. So I would think there'd be kind of like some kind of visual uplift as it's put into production, because that's kind of what I would assume.
Yeah, and it might be a good time to sort of ditch some of the styles, and if there are styles or templates or things that we don't like in Kubernetes right now, it might be a good time to evaluate those and add and delete as necessary.
Yeah, agreed.
I'm thinking in particular of like the 1,000,000-line CSS file that we're currently supporting.
Awesome. I made a note there, David, too, about the visual uplift, so we can bring that back around next week if we would like when Zach's there. But I agree. It sounds like we're all on the same page there, that visual uplift is long overdue, and I think it's the ongoing joke that the website is the best that 2012 has to offer.
Oh, no.
So, yeah, we'll get there and we'll be better. And moving on, the KEP update. So this is, I was going to also look towards Zach for it. I know, Jared, I saw some comments last night coming in from you on the KEP. Do you have any current status or any updates that you'd like to provide on the KEP?
No, all of my thoughts were in the comments that I added to that PR.
Perfect. And I'll add the link to the agenda as well if it's not buried down there once I'm not doing a million things. And if anyone has any other feedback or comments they want to leave in the KEP, that'd be appreciated. Really what I want to do is start to move that KEP forward to saying, what are we going to do? There's been a lot of iterations on it. There's been a lot of bike shedding and some positive bike shedding on it. And I think we're getting to a spot now where we need to make a decision and move forward and get it merged, and let's stop defining the KEP and actually implementing the KEP, if that's the way we're going to move forward. All right, and moving on, wrapping up the year. So I saw this when I was reading some of the notes for today, and I see that we passed the 18,000.
Just one thing. Sorry, I hate to interrupt, but I know Rob Kitely asked a question about Hugo. I didn't know if that was a joke or not, but it's in the chat for the group. I just want to make sure that ends up on the agenda.
Oh, great call. I actually didn't see that that comment there.
Yeah, I just wanted to. I have to step out for another meeting, but I just want to make sure that like his question didn't get dropped.
No, appreciate it. Thanks a lot, Jared.
Thanks.
All right, let me add this to the end of the agenda here, Rob. We'll come back to that. Cool. So, and real quick, we are not leaving Hugo behind. So Hugo is the engine that generates our website, and Doxy is a theme for Hugo. So just for clarification there, we'll still be using Hugo to generate and build our websites. We'll still be using Netlify for hosting our websites. What we'll be doing is stripping out that theme and evaluating the core content to bring our website up to standards that are a little bit more modern. And yep, no problem, Rob. So what I was saying about this wrapping up the year is I was reading these document notes for today, and I see that we passed the 18,000th mark, and that was written by Zach. And I'm not sure exactly 18,000 of what we passed, but we sure did. Does anybody have context on that? Is that page views, contributors, PRs?
I believe it's PRs, but I'm not looking at the moment.
Okay. Well, we'll leave that be, but I thought that was pretty funny. I was like, yeah, we passed 18,000 of something. but neither here nor there, I suppose. For vacations, you can take a look at the doc there. It looks like Zach, Jared, Jennifer, and Brad all have some time off coming up in December and January. I'm not going to sit there and read all the vacation schedules to you, but I think a lot of folks are traveling during the holidays, so just be aware of that. PR Wrangler schedule, I think we've already touched on that. Jennifer, do you think there needs to be anything further said about the Wrangler, or we have everything we need to move forward?
I think we're good. I updated the agenda to reflect what we just discussed, and that's all we need to say about it.
Awesome. Cool. Cruising along here. So moving on, last week, just getting carried over from last week's meeting, was talking about overlapping initiatives in between special interest groups. So mainly contributor experience in SIG Docs. I have also thrown in SIG Release in the conversation. But really, I haven't taken any action yet on this, but the plan is to involve the chairs to potentially get some sort of weekly, monthly, some sort of regular sync with the different SIGs. So folks who are actively involved in SIG Contribex don't feel the need to stretch themselves too thin and get involved with SIG Docs or start. No one can be everywhere all at once, I guess is what I'm saying. And the people who are interested in different SIGs might not always have the purview of seeing what SIG Docs is working on or seeing what Contribex is working on. And what really stemmed all of this is Contribex is looking at a markdown linter for their current repository. And we're also looking for a markdown linter in our repository. So really this stems from, let's make sure that we're not duplicating efforts. And if we are trying to solve the same problem, let's make sure we're solving it together. And that's the long and short of it. So no update there, but there'll be more communication to come and potentially some future updates. And moving on to the blog sub-project, and I will kick this over to you, Caitlin.
Awesome, thanks. So I just wanted to give basically a refresher for what the blog process looks like. As I said, we formalized this as a sub-project of SIG Docs earlier this year. So with that, some things have changed in the review and approve process for this content. I'm going to drop the link in here as well. The link I dropped is kind of your source of truth for this whole process. Basically, we have a blog team, which is a sub-team of SIG Docs that reviews all incoming content for both technical expertise. We have copy editors to make sure it adheres to the style guide, all of that. Within that, really only the content that needs to go through the blog team is new blog posts. Just because we own the editorial calendar, we have some of that background knowledge as to what's coming down the pipe, and to make sure that the content adheres to these different guidelines. Primarily, the two big things for content is we only accept original content on the Kubernetes blog, so we don't accept any cross posts. It's not an amplification channel. We want this to be really valuable content to the community. And then everything has to be open source and vendor neutral. So the blog team will go through and make sure that it adheres to all of that. Everything gets tagged with a blog label, so you'll know if you're an approver or a reviewer, you'll know if it needs to get, if it should be assigned out to us. We do have an auto-labeling feature where it should be assigning it to us. Occasionally, sometimes, it might get missed within the process. So if you see that happen, you can assign it to me directly or anyone else on the blog team. We have a GitHub team there as well. For any questions on that, we have a Docs blog channel in Slack, as well as a mailing list for any content that comes out. And then the only other thing I wanted to say was something we added within this new process was, like I said, the only things that really need to go through us is brand new content, or if for some reason there was like a really big structural change to a blog post. Any other approver or reviewer on the team is empowered and welcome to review content and approve anything like link changes, if there's a typo fix in there. Basically anything after the fact, you're welcome to approve. And I think that's all I wanted to give a refresher on today, but any questions?
Is there any opinions on the age of content? I know I've seen some PRs come in that are fixing a blog post from 2016, for example. Do we just blanket approve because it's technically accurate, or what do you have for as far as aging is concerned?
Yeah, great question. So our policies, we don't make edits to blog posts more than 1 year old. I don't feel as strongly if it's, if someone already submits a link change and it helps the blog post, I'm fine with approving that.
Awesome, thank you.
And then we also meet every other Tuesday at 11:30, and always welcome help on this team as well. So if any of you are interested in that, feel free to join us.
For the tutorials and walkthroughs for your blog guidelines, what kind of tutorials and walkthroughs are you looking for? Installation, loading apps on the Kubernetes, or is there like any parameters around that?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, and we've run into it a few times where occasionally we'll get something in that's a better fit for, docked tutorials versus the blog. But for the blog, primarily what we're looking for is tutorials with other ecosystem technologies. Anything, other CMCF technologies, stuff like that. If it's a specific how-to within Kubernetes that's a better fit for the actual documentation, we'll occasionally, refer that piece of content there instead.
Okay, cool, thanks.
Yeah, and actually, you just drew my attention. We had we used to have examples linked out to what these all look like. So I'm going to make a note to add that as well. And then any, SIG updates, stuff like that. So we get a lot of tutorials from SIG Storage, for example, on how to walk through new features. That's really helpful.
Awesome, thank you. Any other comments, questions on the blog before moving on?
Just a big thank you to Caitlin for continuing to guide this stuff so brilliantly.
Absolutely.
Of course, and if anybody has questions, if anything comes up, like I said, we have that Slack channel, and we always hang out in there to answer anything.
Great. All right, so moving on to a recommendation of using sudo in the documentation. There should be a suggestion around this in the documentation style guide, and I do not believe it is. Looks like Vino, you are on this call now. Do you have any further context you'd like to provide?
Yeah, thank you. My name is Bango, and I know this is not a big problem, but I want to clarify consistency of using sudo command or not sudo in documentation command example. And I believe this is related to documentation style guide. So, and I looked at this documentation style guide, and it said discussion around documentation style guide should be discussed at this weekly meeting. So I have this items to today's meeting. As this issue said, there is pros and cons around using sudo or not using sudo. So there is no clear decision around this. So there should be discussion on this. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, and thank you for bringing this up. I do think it's a valid conversation to have. And looking at the issue that was opened up, I see here that Lubomir mentioned that it was their opinion that the best option is to include relevant locations, that these commands need to be run as root, and then eliminate root from the command line interface. So that sounds reasonable to me. Does anyone have strong feelings one way or the other if sudo should be included in the command line, or just as a overall point of reference and then not in the command itself? not hearing a ton of opinions one way
I
or the
would,
other.
I think you have to involve the Cube8EM team because I think they have their own end-to-end testing that they do, and I'd be curious if it does have pseudo commands in it. And if it doesn't, if it does have pseudo in their end-to-end testing, I think maybe they should be involved because the documentation should match the actual testing that that group does that's in charge of Cube8EM, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree with that for the Kube-ADM pieces. There are more examples in the Kubernetes documentation where sudo does come up too. Definitely in this specific case, Kube-ADM makes sense.
Fair enough. Yep, fair enough.
So I know, were you going to say something? Nope, sorry. Yeah, so I think honestly, this just takes once again someone to own this and see this to completion. It sounds like a style guide update is needed, and I think style update is needed. Sorry, walking and talking here. I think a style guide update is needed to have just a stance on this. I don't know if it has to be necessarily the correct stance out of the gate. I like the opinion of if it was just mentioned in the article and then the actual command examples itself doesn't have the pseudo declaratively spelled out every single time. Completely open for debate. I don't want to be, Jim says this, so this is how we're moving forward. I'm not attached to that opinion by any means, but just gut checking right now and talking out loud, that seems to make sense. Is there anybody on this call that would want to own that action item to create that style guide update, or at the very least open an issue to update the style guide? So here, nothing leaves us at a little funky spot. And the reason I say that is at some point we need to resolve the issue of having pseudo showing up there. The issue that Vino you originally opened up about the consistency issues. So I think pending ownership and pending moving forward, it sounds like there's not really a strong feeling one way or the other. It just, we need to get some sort of opinion in the style guide. We need someone to own that process. And Vino, would you be willing to update the style guide? Vinu Ishii?
Sorry. Yeah. If there is no another person, I would like to update style guide.
Awesome. That would be very helpful. Thank you.
Yes. But a problem is clearly which choices we should have. And
yes,
there is.
Yeah. Sorry.
Sorry. There is no recommendation from participants. So
could I make
it's hard to, yeah.
I would suggest that that you make a decision and pick what you think is best. And I think if you were to do that, and if we were to encounter any strong opinions against it, we could then have a more meaningful discussion. But my gut instinct would be that you won't get any strong opinions on it. But if you made a style choice, we would probably, as a community, go with your choice unless, upon further consideration, we could think of a reason to not make the choice that you make. So, what I'd recommend is make a choice and let's see what happens. I on reading your issue, I would agree with everything you say, and it's a 50-50 call as to which choice to make, really, you know. And as an end user, if I was to copy and paste commands from the web page, number one, I must be careful how I do that, and number two, it's not a problem to include or exclude a sudo, and it's not a big problem to insert a sudo if I need to. So I think, yeah, whatever choice you make is probably an okay choice.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I would second that. Feel free to take action, make a PR to update the style guide. And if you have any questions or need any help, then come to the SIG Docs channel on Slack, or find me on Slack too, any one of us, and we can definitely help.
Thank you very much.
It's kind of I think I'm probably the only like semi-formally trained tech writer left on the call. It's a really classic tech writer thing. Just pick one and stick to it, which is what everybody else has been saying, right? Just pick it and stick to it. So yeah, if people need to bike shed, they'll bike shed, but more often than not, they just appreciate having the guidance.
Okay. So I will make PR, and yeah, I will tackle this. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And thank you for bringing the issue up. I think it definitely needs to be resolved.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good eye for security. Appreciate it.
Yep. Cool.
Thank
So
you.
moving on to the agenda here. Rob, this is the question that came up in chat. It looks like your mic's working now. How the feature table is generated. So I submitted a link there of where the table comes from. Right now it's all generated by hand in Markdown.
Okay, so I had a look at this about 2 or 3 months ago, and then I submitted a talk for the contributor experience, and much to my surprise, it was accepted. So I was head down with that until QCon San Diego. So I have some time this month to put into this. Overall, my first pass at looking this, I found Hugo. There was 2 issues that I had. One was I got a little bit frustrated because I thought this should be easier than what it appeared to be. And in my first pass at looking at this, I thought to myself, oh, well, all I have to do is annotate part of the DOM with some tags to introduce it to a jQuery table sorter, and it should be bish, bash, bosh, and it should be simple. But what I quickly discovered was I didn't have enough Hugo knowledge to knock this out easily. And then, so I did a bit of moaning about this at KubeCon, and somebody said to me, well, it's not that hard. All you have to do is drop in the HTML, annotate it as to how you want it, and dropping in an extra JavaScript library shouldn't be a problem. And then I realized that in that casual conversation, that I realized that my issue is that I effectively need to look at the process to generate the markdown and perhaps modify it to generate HTML, which we would then include, then annotate, and then jQuery sort, jQuery filter. So so I'll take I'll make the time this month, and it'll probably be around the holidays to get stuck into this myself. But if there was anyone on the call or anyone in the Slack room that could help me with Hugo and help me with this, that would be awesome.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's a few different ways you can slice up data in Hugo. There's many different approaches. I can't say one is more correct than the other. Okay. But as you kind of trudge down this journey, if you post any open questions into the SIG Docs channel, I'm very active in there, so as many other folks on this call. I think you'll get the help that you need, or I'd hope that you'd get the help that you need. And if not,
excellent,
feel free to ping me.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Thank you so much.
And if nobody else responds, ping Luke Perkins.
Thank you.
That's what I should have said, is don't ping me, ping Luke.
That was the specific signposting I think I needed. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Luke Perkins. Brilliant. Thank you.
Don't tell him I sent you. Don't tell him I sent you.
I won't. But I just say. Yeah. I'll make something up. Don't worry.
He'll know anyway.
Okay.
Great. No, sounds good. And cool. Then just one last housekeeping item here is that next week, even though it's not the third meeting time of the month, we're going to do the Asia Pacific time meeting. I'll send out the communications via the SIG Docs channel after the meeting today. Just an update. So no regular time meeting next week. It'll be the APAC friendly time. And then the last thing too that I didn't touch on about the chair shuffling between Jennifer and Caitlin, as far as dates and communications go, for the official nomination, the official step down, we had to do this with Jared and my onboarding and doing it all up in the open and through GitHub issues and whatnot. Do we have any dates? And then also, who's going to be leading the communications?
Caitlin, shall we meet?
And if you want to take us offline, it's all good.
I'm not trying to take it away from a public forum, but we are coming up on the end of the meeting, and I'm just thinking that maybe if Caitlin and I just agree about what our availability is, we can then put our conclusions in a public channel. My brain is just spinning right now. I'm in San Francisco for 3 solid days worth of day jobness, and I just declined this morning so I could attend this meeting. I'm now like really not in Kubernetes land for the rest of this week, and will be returning at least briefly between now and the end of the year. So I don't have an answer for you, Jim. That's why I'm being sort of sloppy and fuzzy here.
It is totally all good, and I didn't mean to spring that on you.
No. I don't feel sprung upon. It's something you're quite right to point out. And I recall various GitHub rituals being required when I stepped up as chair too. It's not a big deal, but we do need to sort it. Right. I would kind of like to. Zach might have an order of operations in mind too, so we'll get it sorted by next Tuesday. How's that?
I will come into a theater near you.
Yep.
That works. And with that, we are on the hour, or just about. Is there anything else that was not on today's agenda that someone would like to discuss? Hearing nothing, I'll give us the countdown. I guess I should say countdown for final thoughts. Otherwise, everyone's going to stand there and wait for the countdown to finish and not interject. But anyways, that's an official SIG Docs meeting. Appreciate y'all joining me and us today, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much,
later.
Jim.
Thank you.
All right, bye.